How do you steward vision as a creative?
Vision. Yeah, that's vision. Again, so this is another question I ask myself a lot, this question. And again, I was doing this today with these people I was with. I asked the question, if I could be anywhere that I wanted to be, where would I be? Okay, so the important word in that question is be.
Yeah.
Not where would I live. Where would I be if I could be anywhere I wanted to be? And so for me right now, just the way my life is going, I would be writing a screenplay. I would be writing a screenplay if I could be anywhere I wanted to be. So that statement, I would be writing a screenplay, is a statement of identity, not location or vocation. It's an identity statement because it's on the idea of being, right? So always asking that question, where would I be if I could be anywhere, is an identity question. And that identity question, I would be writing a screenplay, immediately produces vision. Like it's all it can produce is vision.
Yeah.
And again, so if I would be writing a screenplay, then I don't have to really ask the Lord what to do. Like I know now, well, if I was writing a screenplay, what would that involve? And so then I just start moving in that direction, even though I have 100 other things going on in my life. It doesn't matter, because then what happens is the events that I'm involved in begin to contribute to writing a screenplay. Even these bizarre, unrelated things start just opening up doors to writing a screenplay. So I don't have to like pursue it and labor over it and fight for it. I just have to be that. Be the identity that can move in the flow of that happening. Yeah. It's very beautiful. It's very beautiful. And so I've had that feeling, that vision, that sense of myself writing a screenplay for about 3 months. And then, because I have it in my mind, whatever I'm doing, that it affects what I'm doing, right? Yeah. So I went and spoke at this small group. It turns out in the small group, there's a film producer in the small group, just works out, happens to be. And so he's in there and he's very moved what I'm saying about creativity. So he calls me and says, hey, let's go drink coffee. I go drink coffee with him. He looks at me and he goes, tell me a story. Just tell me a story. So I tell him a story and he says, tell me another story. And I tell him another story. And he said, you could write a screenplay. He said, do you know that? And I said, yeah, I know that. Well, going to his group is part of my normal job, right? It doesn't have anything to do with writing a screenplay. But in my spirit, I have this sense that in my identity, that's sort of the next thing that I need to be.
Yeah.
And so if I don't pursue it, I don't try and like start calling Hollywood. I just I just start paying attention to it. I'm aware of it, and ideas scripts start going through my mind, and I'm just making notes on stuff. So that was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was with him. Then this guy in Detroit calls me, who's a missions pastor in Detroit. He calls me and he says, hey, Jamie, I'm kind of wrestling with my future. Do you care if me and my wife fly out and stay with you and Donna for 2 days and you just walk me through thinking through this process? And I'm like, wow, I'm kind of busy to take 2 days with one guy, and I thought, yeah, come on. So he comes out to me. We spend 2 days together praying about his future. And then after we pray off this, very beautiful and moving. And then he says to me, can I send you some ideas that I'm working on based on what we prayed about? Yeah. He goes back to Detroit. The next day he sends me an email and he says, I just met with the CEO of Rideback Studios in Hollywood. He said, the guy wants me to come out and meet with him about my future. Would you like to come with me? Because he wants to hear you talk about creativity. Wow. And I said, when? And I said, when? He said, April 12th. So I said, yeah. So now, do you see like these things just all start they're there, but I'm not making them happen.
Right.
I'm just doing what I normally do in what I in my job, but the vision is I can see the opportunity where I wouldn't see it if I wasn't in my identity with vision.
Yeah.
Kind of like Hagar's out in the desert dying and she's going to die, and then suddenly there's a spring there that she couldn't see until she could hear God.
Yeah.
Right? Or everyone goes in the tomb but nobody sees angels except Mary.
Yeah.
Like, how come she can see it and they can't see it?
Yeah.
It's that idea.
Yeah.
He's more attentive. She's more, yeah.
I can really resonate with that because, like, I've just finished my DTS, and during outreach, me and a friend kind of formed a band, and I feel like that's kind of establishing this band as a vision for this sort of next season of my life, and kind of having that awareness has sort of changed the way I perceive situations I'm in, and I know the Lord has brought people in who are going to have an impact and influence my creativity in the future.
That's right.
Yeah, like connections that pop up kind of at random.
Right.
But I know they're God ordained for sure.
Yeah, and that makes tomorrow fun. I mean, that's what gives you joy. It's like I don't have to make this stuff happen. I just have to pay attention to something that God's made me aware of in myself. But it does make sense to me to write a screenplay. I mean, like, it's not like I've never, ever in my life ever thought about writing.
Right, there's
a
possibility about it. Yeah.
Right. So if I'm praying with a guy and he says, I feel like I should, become a professional football player, and he's never played any, that would be like, I don't know. But it should line up. It should make sense to us.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the goal is high, it still should be like, yeah, but that's something I've really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. You've already talked about how you handle failure as a creative. Okay. If you are mostly rooted in your true identity but fall into a performance mindset every now and then, what are some practical tools to help you sort of return to your true identity?
Oh, that's such a good question, because we're so, my small story, your small story, my own identity is inside a bigger story, right? We're inside of a world story. And so the world story that we're in is all about production. That's what it's all about, unfortunately. All of it, Christianity, all of it's about what you can produce.
Yeah.
And so it's very difficult to stay free of that mentality. Very hard. Because everyone around you is in it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way they know how to measure things is by production and that sort of thing. So what you have to do is keep distinguishing in your mind, am I producing things or am I bearing fruit? Those are two different things. Okay, one is happening organically out of my identity in my walk with Jesus and the Spirit. The other one is me working and laboring and toiling to produce measurable things to gain identity from it.
Yeah.
One comes from my identity, fruit. The other is trying to prove my identity to myself and other people. That's production.
Yeah.
That's brick making, like the slaves in Egypt. They're just making bricks. And so if I'm just, if I just decide, well, I'm going to try and write articles and make a living, I'm just making bricks.
Yeah.
But if things are being born out of my relationship with God, myself, and others, that's fruit.
Mm-hmm.
The way you know the difference is fruit brings transformation in other people, and production doesn't. So like we have a really big church here in Seattle. We have two that are really good churches. However, they're not bearing fruit in the sense of they're not causing transformation in the city. They're just producing a lot of really good podcasts and books and making a ton of money. They are. But the neighborhood where the church is, there's no transformation there. That's no judgment on them. That's just they have a different goal.
Yeah.
Right? So Somerset Maugham, the British writer, said it. He said some people write to unburden their soul and some people write to produce books. So one is a slave, I would say, just producing stuff themselves, and the other is a person who's from their identity is giving birth to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah, and so that's like I can write stuff without being particularly creative, and I know it'll sell. I've done it before, but it doesn't move me in any way. Yeah. That's why I don't write a blog, because it would be a production for me. It wouldn't be born out of, God's movement inside of my true self. It would just be because this is what you do to get more notoriety. You write blogs, or you do podcasts or whatever like that. So, and I have no joy in doing it. There it is again. It's just like,
yeah. Awesome. How do you create a culture in which people live in their true identity?
Oh, same thing. Truth telling. Having a community around you that's committed to truth telling. I can't say more. I can't say it any stronger than that. Like if I'm working with a group of police officers, like we're doing now, we can talk all day long about tolerance and, what's a good police officer. But if they won't look at me and say, I hate black people, nothing will change. You have to tell the truth, right? Yeah. We have to say, I'm afraid of this person. I'm afraid of dying. I am afraid that God doesn't love me. If you won't say those kinds of things truthfully, nothing can change. And it needs to be in community. It really does. So surrounding my iron sharpens iron is people who will truth tell together and then listen to God together. And then your identity strikes against my identity. So your movement towards becoming who you really are sharpens my movement into me becoming who I really am. And so when we're together, we're actually just sharpening one another because your accountability to me is to live in my true identity. That's what you're holding me accountable to. And I'm holding you.
What if you're in a community of both Christians and non-Christians?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference. So one of the guys that I'm working with right now, he's not even close to being a believer.
Yeah.
And he's a notorious truth teller, and he's listening to a voice that he doesn't call God, but that's dramatically affecting him personally and vocationally. But even today, he sent me what's happening in his life. He goes, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. But he doesn't consider any of it Christianity or God. He doesn't know what to call it, actually. But my Christian friends would have names for everything that's happened to him, but he doesn't. So it's kind of hard to say, is he a Christian or not? Like, what's a Christian and what's not a Christian? That's a funny distinction. So was Jesus a Christian? Were the disciples Christians? What were they? They wouldn't call themselves that. What would they say they were? How would they identify them? Or the Samaritan woman, when Jesus dramatically transforms her life, what does she call herself after he leaves? She's not a Jew. She's not a Christian. What would she call herself? So those names of what you call the people in your group are mostly invented names. Yeah. So the Spirit of God would never move in a room and go, okay, I need all the Christians on this side of the room and all the non-Christians. He would never, that's not how God identifies people. Yeah. He identifies them by the identity that he gave them. So that's more important than our designations for people.
Yeah, I suppose when I say Christian, I mean like someone who is walking in relationship with the Lord.
Right, yeah, so that's a fascinating question. So, these are other challenges that make it hard for us to go among people that we don't think are doing that.
Yeah.
Because we think they should look a certain way and speak a certain way.
Right.
So it's the belief that when I go to sit down with the person I'm going to pray with, they've never heard God speak before. But they have, actually. I've never met a person that's never heard God speak, ever. They might not call it that. They might not attribute it to God, but once we're into it, they know the voice. They know it. They've heard it since they were young. So it's kind of like saying, where is a place you can go where God isn't? He's with them. They just don't think he is, or they don't believe he is. Yeah. It's an interesting discussion. So Colossians says that all things are held together. All things in creation are held together in Christ.
Yeah.
All things. Not Christian things. All things. Not like Christian electrons are held together by God, but atheist electrons aren't. Like, there's no distinction, right? We create these distinctions. Now, there are people that don't participate with God. Absolutely. But they can be very strong Christians that aren't participating with God.
Yeah.
They can say all the right words and pray all the right prayers, but they're not participating with the movement of God in themselves.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's people that don't call themselves Christians who are doing it at a very deep level. So it's a little murky when you're trying to make distinctions. So here's back to what I'm saying. So if I'm in a group of people, like this one police officer who's doing dramatically interesting things in the police department, because when we meet together, this is what he'll do with me. He'll tell the truth about what he's afraid of, what he thinks is impossible, and then he'll sit with me in silence and listen to what's true. That's what he calls it. Now let's just you said what you think is true. Now let's listen to truth itself speak. That's what we do together. And that's where he gets all of his ideas.
Yeah.
Because it corrects his other view.
Yeah.
And then he goes out and acts on what he heard.
Yeah.
But he would never call him, he's never even talked about Jesus. We've never even talked about that.
Yeah.
Or the Spirit or any of that. But here's what he knows. This works.
Yeah.
That's what he knows.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging.
Yeah.
Now, will he come to understand Jesus? He will, absolutely. But it'll be the way that the Lord decides for him to understand it.
Yeah.
Not me saying, okay, now's the time for me to tell you what's happening.
Yeah. So when, like, you recognize that someone isn't walking in their true identity, you simply tell them to listen to the voice of truth. You don't call forth.
I say to them, tell me, if they're not walking in their truth, I'll say this to them. I'll say, tell me what negative emotion you're wrestling with right now. Like, what is it? Because that's the place where the lie is, and it's how the lie is expressed is through negative emotion. So I can say to any human, I do it all the time. Like, what's the main negative emotion you're wrestling with? And they'll ultimately say fear or shame, something like that. Okay, so that's where what they believe about God, themselves, or others is false.
Yeah.
And so I just work like, hey, tell me what you're afraid of. Well, I'm afraid that my marriage will never change. Wow. Okay. Well, what does that mean you believe about yourself as a marriage partner? Yeah, that I'm not good at it. I'm a failure. And nothing can ever make it better. So whether they say God can't do it or they just think it can't ever happen, it's the same thing. So if I'm talking to a person that's a believer, I would say, well, what does that say you believe about God?
Yeah.
Yeah, he can't fix a bad marriage, right? Right? So he wants to correct it, but you somehow believe that he won't, so your belief prevents you from participating in what he would tell you to do to help it be healed.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've already given up.
Mm-hmm.
You've already failed. It's already, and you can just see it on people's faces. You can hear it when they talk.
Mm-hmm.
Right?